Hello and welcome to the home of the Ghost Owl, and here we are for part 2 of our look at the special units in the Vampire Counts 8th edition army book as part of our The Old World faction focus. So we know Vampire Counts are going to get index/legendary rules for Warhammer The Old World, so they will have some rules, so they will be playable at least. So we are completing all the different factions, and now we're looking at the second half of the special units in their roster. First up are the Fell Bats. Okay, above average wounds and attacks, low everything else, and their movement is 1 if they can't fly. So they can fly, but their movement characteristic, if they couldn't fly, was 1. No equipment and a unit size of 2+. Special rules, they're undead, which means they have to be within 12 inches of a general to charge. They're not vampiric, that kind of sucks, but they can fly. To be honest, I never took these or saw these on the tabletop. 32 points for a unit of 2. You could take nearly 3 Graveguard for that. Fellbat's stat line is poor. They got low durability, are vulnerable to shooting, combined with, to be honest, terrible miniatures, made them an auto discard for me. These are the old miniatures. I really didn't like them. Now, the new Fellbats, which have been released, now these are nice looking miniatures. If they got rules to make them worth taking, that would be no problem for me. You can see the difference here. Absolutely really nice looking Fellbats here. These, really not my flavour. So that is the Fellbats. Like I say, never saw these guys on the table. Bat Swarms, however, right, above average wounds and attacks, low strength and toughness, typical sort of swarm profile. Equipment none, unit size is 2 bases. You can see there's an individual base here. So there's 2 bases. That was the minimum size here. So they're undead, yep. So they have the same issues. They're not vampiric. They can't march unless within 12 inches of a general. They can fly, but they come with this cloud of horror. Now, this is what makes these real interesting and a worthy choice against the direwolves, which is if they become in base contact with an enemy unit, they give it always strikes last. That can really help out your low initiative Vampire Count units, and that could actually really make them worth taking. If you've got the points to spare, it's 70 points for a unit of 2. The damage output's low, but that ability to give always strikes last can be really key. And they fly, which gives them the utility over direwolf. So you can really make sure that you put that cloud of horror on the right unit. The main issue over direwolves is the fact they're in the special category, which is, there's points cap on there. There's lots of things to choose from in special category. So, can you fit them in? The models weren't too bad. And these are the newer ones here, which also look pretty good. So no real issues with the miniatures. It's more about direwolves versus bat swarms. Both have utility. Both do something slightly different. I do think the bat swarms have a little bit more utility, but can you afford to spend the points in that special category? Always a challenge. Next up, the Spirit Host. Above average movement, wounds and attacks, low weapon skill, initiative and leadership, no equipment. Unit size is 1 to 10. They are ethereal. So rarely taken. They're 45 points per base. The damage output's low. The durability of being ethereal alone just isn't enough to justify them in the list. Many other better tar pit options, even in the core category. So I really just didn't quite know what their role, they just didn't really kind of have this role. You kind of feel like they would be a swarmy thing, like a swarmy style unit that would be quite good at tar pitting or move blocking. They're just other units that did it better. The old miniatures, not the best. The new ones, these look pretty cool. These came in, you can see this is very much the end times when you had Nagash. These are very similar miniatures that came out at that time. I think these may have even came out around that time with the new Nagash in the end times. But look really cool now, no doubt about that. In terms of their role in the 8th edition army book, I just felt there were lots of things that did it better, and there were better options in the special category again. So that is our Spirit Host. The Hexwraiths. Now, these were, I think, a new unit in 8th edition, if I remember correctly, all plastic, above average movement, but low everything else. They come with a great weapon, which is a downside because it means always striking last. Unit size 5 to 10, they can have a champion. Now, they're undead, which means they can't march. They cause terror, which is always good. They're ethereal, right. But their special rules is really what makes them different. So they come with Soul Reapers. So they give you magical flaming attacks with no armor save. That's pretty nice, especially against those heavy cavalry. Soul Striders, they can move through all units. So you can move through friend and foe units. You just can't end within 1 inch of them. They are fast cavalry, and they are also spectral hunters, which means if they move through an enemy unit, it immediately takes a strength 5 hit with no armor saves allowed. So this is an interesting cavalry unit that at least does something different. It's just not your bog standard cavalry unit, right? It's got some interesting rules, but the utility is all tied up in its special rules, certainly not its output. The strength 5 1 attack, okay, that's 1 wound. They always strike last, which, even on an ethereal unit, is that enough to keep them alive long enough? Probably not. They can actually do quite well against heavy cavalry, if they got to charge. They are 30 points per model, and I just didn't feel like the rules were enough to justify them when there's more flexible and better options in the special category. You look at 2,000 point army, you already push for points, and in a meta that doesn't favor cavalry, mean they're less effective, and there's less cavalry in enemy armies as well. Really taking them up against something that's got a high armor value, but not that many models. So that if you go up against some Cold War Knights, you got the extra strength with the great weapons. There's no armor saves allowed. That's great, but there aren't many cavalry units on the board. So I kind of felt that lost them some effectiveness as well as being cavalry. Hopefully, as I say, cavalry will be better in the old world, and these could be really interesting because they are different. Their special rules make them different. That makes them interesting and a potentially cool choice. And they actually look pretty cool as well. I actually quite like the fact you've kind of got these flaming cairn wraiths on horses. Looks pretty awesome. And lastly, for our special units part 2, we have the Vargheists. Stat-wise, above average movement, strength, attacks, leadership. Their one downside is they got quite low initiative, no equipment. Unit size is 3+, but they may take a champion. So this was a dual kit with the Crypt Horrors. You can see the influence there. They can fly. This is key. That makes them mobile. They're vampiric. That's key because they can now march. So this unit, being vampiric and fly, is now a unit that can march without being close to the general. That makes them very useful. Frenzy just makes them that bit more powerful. So, to be honest, next to Graveguard, this is my other go-to unit in the special category. That ability to fly, march even if not near the general, gives them amazing mobility. Their strength 5 and 3 attacks each, and with Frenzy could give them a really good damage output. Toughness 4 and 3 wounds meant they could survive shooting reasonably well and survive being attacked back reasonably well. They are 46 points per model, so they're not cheap. But I always tried to fit in at least one unit of between 3 and 6, or 2 units of 3 for added flexibility. Charging a unit in a flank that's targeted by a unit of skeletons or zombies work really well on all but the toughest units. And they could easily deal with units of archers, war machines. Get these guys in the back line, and they can make a real mess with those weak shooting units really quite quickly with their damage output. So Vargheists, really like them. It'll be really interesting how these guys look. They are monstrous infantry, so you got flying monstrous infantry that don't have the normal limitations of being undead, which is really quite good. An excellent unit, I say, one that was my other go-to unit in the special category. And there you go. That brings us to the end of our Vampire Count special units. We've got the rare category to go. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it useful and informative. If you did, give it a thumbs up though. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down, but I want to know why in the comments down below so we can improve the content for the future. And as always, please hit the subscribe button. It's free and it means a massive amount for me. So thank you for that one in advance. Tune back in for our look at the Vampire Count's rare units.